No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Men in Stripes presented by StripeHype.com, a member of the Fansided Network. We also have a new sponsor this week coming along for the ride. Audible.com has over 180,000 ebooks that you can download, Audible books that you can download. You can get your free trial now at audibletrial.com/meninstripes. 30-day trial, get a free book. It's awesome. Check it out. I am actually reading a brand new book. It's called Every Day I Fight. It is by Stuart Scott. It is about his life living with cancer, trying to beat cancer, being a family man. It's awesome. They've got some great books on there. Definitely a good read, especially for sports fans. So go to audibletrials.com/meninstripes and get your free trial 30 days there. I am here, not with Tim, but with our other co-host. How are you, Shelby?
I'm doing great, Matt. Getting closer to the Bengals getting back on the field, and I just want to watch some football that isn't against Pittsburgh and just get that out of my brain.
Yeah, that definitely is on a lot of Bengals minds for sure, and Bengals fans for that matter. Big game this week against the Denver Broncos. They are 2-0. The Bengals are 1-1, but it is the home opener. So definitely the right time to come home and get last week off everybody's mind.
Yeah, and finally, Matt, and the first two games we go on the road against two quality opponents, and the NFL didn't do us any favors coming back home against the reigning Super Bowl champs, but 11-4-1 at home the last two seasons, won 4 straight home openers, so we got to feel confident about it.
So before we get into the game breakdown for this week, let's go over some NFL news this week. First and foremost, of course, this should be no shock to anybody. Josh Gordon is in trouble again, but this time it's because he doesn't want to be a daddy. I don't know. There's just something wrong with that.
Yeah, Twitter the other day, it's just like a bunch of Maury memes with Josh Gordon, and I saw Ian Rappaport tweet that it won't affect his suspension status. He's still going to come back. I believe he's suspended 4 games. Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So, I didn't really look into that, but, Cleveland, that receiving core needs as much help as it can get right now, and that's just kind of side news that doesn't really have any merit because it's not going to affect him coming back on the field.
Now, the NFL has actually come out and said directly that this won't affect the situation with the suspension at all, and so it just seems like it is a personal matter. The NFL's leaving it as a personal matter, and probably the right move there for once, even though it's with Josh Gordon. So, of course, as we know, the Browns can never catch a break. And other news out of Browns camp, Corey Coleman, rookie, the guy who caught a ton of passes last week, now out for 6 weeks, or at least up to 6 weeks, with a broken hand. That's going to affect him.
Yeah, man. Coleman looked great catching passes from McCown, caught 2 touchdowns in that bad Browns loss, in typical Browns fashion, blowing a 20-point lead to the Ravens. But yeah, it kind of leaves this receiving core up in shambles. That Terrell Pryor is going to be their number 1 receiver right now, and follow that with Andrew Hawkins, and then some no-names, Rashard Higgins, Jordan Payton, Ricardo Lewis, I believe, are on their active roster right now. But definitely a bad break for the Browns. That's just kind of been the pattern for the last 15 years or so. They're going to start their 26th quarterback since they they came back to the NFL in '99. 5th different quarterback in the last 5 games, dating back to Week 16 of last season. So yeah, Cleveland can't catch a break, and our old pal Hugh Jackson hasn't caught one either through the first 3 games.
No, and the funny thing is we say they gave up a 20-point lead, and the 20-point lead was very short-lived in that game because that was 2 points was given up on the extra point attempt, if I'm not mistaken, to try to make it 21-0. And so that obviously, I guess, swung momentum somehow, some way. 2 point swings momentum to a 25-20 win for the Ravens. I don't understand that, but then again, that's why we say the Browns find every way to lose.
Yeah, and even, Terrell Pryor with the taunting call, I don't know if you saw that taunting call. He made a great catch down around the 7-8 yard line, and then all he was doing was trying to toss the ball back to the ref, but it looked like he kind of stuck to his glove. He didn't flip it all the way. Like, he probably had a 5-foot gap to flip the ball. It kind of got stuck to his glove, and it landed right on top of the quarterback's helmet, and the one official came running in from the side, thought he was taunting the quarterback, and cost the Browns 15 yards and a good chance to probably win it with a touchdown there.
Yeah, for sure, and that's the interesting thing is that I guess him and the pitcher from the Yankees were on the same page with a little pine tar,
Yeah.
But you have gloves on, you don't need the pine tar. Other news coming out, of course, Gronk. By the time this goes up, the game will have already started. But Gronk is active for tonight for the New England Patriots, coming obviously at a time when they really needed a break, with Garoppolo being down now with a shoulder injury, and of course Brady still 2 games away from returning from his suspension.
Yeah, and tough for me to ever feel bad for the Patriots when they've been good every single year. It seems like. I mean, countless every year. It's pretty much a lock for a first-round bye in an AFC East championship. But yeah, big to get Gronk back, and especially I think Garoppolo out tonight. Correct?
Yeah, Garoppolo is out there starting a rookie third
Brissett.
string. Yep.
And with rookie quarterbacks, I saw this with Jameis Winston a lot in his first year, and Marcus Mariota. Mariota favored Delaney Walker. Winston favored Austin Seferian-Jenkins, and at the beginning of Andy Dalton's career, in Cincinnati, he preferred Jermaine Gresham, short routes, trying to get the ball out quick, and rookie quarterbacks just tend to gravitate towards tight ends. I could see Cody Kessler going towards Gary Barnidge for Cleveland, and I could see Brissett. I mean, you have the number 1 tight end in the NFL at your disposal. I mean, you see a lot of targets for Gronk tonight from a guy making his first NFL start.
And that's what I'm hoping for, because I have him started in fantasy. Other news coming out, there was a injury to Doug Martin. Hamstring injury, out potentially for 3 weeks. So definitely a little setback there.
Yeah, and Martin had a great year last year. Didn't find the end zone as much, but yeah, to make matters worse, to Tampa Bay, who just had an awful loss in Arizona, 40-7. Jameis Winston looked like a rookie in that game after he lit up the Falcons in Week 1. Winston threw 4 picks, lost a fumble. Now he loses Doug Martin, so it'll be a split between Charles Sims and Jaquiz Rogers in the backfield, kind of a running back by committee approach there. But I'm not sure who I know the Bucs are playing a very winnable game this year. I believe it's against the Rams this week.
It is against the Rams, against LA in Tampa Bay.
Okay.
Vikings, of course, we knew that they had lost AP. We finally figured out how long. Looks like he'll be missing 2 to 3 months with that torn meniscus, as he got surgery earlier this week. They just can't catch a break in Minnesota. Teddy Bridgewater goes down. Now their top running back and Adrian Peterson goes down. Could this possibly put them at a disadvantage? Of course, going into to Carolina and playing the defending NFC champions.
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime you lose Adrian Peterson, it's gonna decline your team's ability on offense. But I mean, let's not disregard the fact that Peterson struggled the first 2 games. 1.9 yards per carry, lowest by anyone in the NFL, with over 20 carries to their credit. But yeah, Minnesota 2-0 though. without Teddy Bridgewater. They went to Nashville, won a game with Sean Hill, and then Sam Bradford looked fantastic targeting Stephon Diggs against the Packers. So I don't have them winning in Carolina. I don't see Sam Bradford doing that. But as far as the NFC North goes, I think, they run the football with Jared McKinnon and Matt Asiata. Sam Bradford plays decently, and you kind of game manage and rely on that defense. And you saw Sunday night, that defense still pretty dang good against one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers, who had a healthy set of weapons. Jordy Nelson, Jared Cook, Randall Cobb, Eddie Lacy, James Starks held him to 14 points, I believe. So I think that defense will still set the tone throughout the entire year until AP can get back. And I think Minnesota's destined to repeat as back-to-back NFC North champions because, Green Bay, for whatever reason, they still have a lot of kinks to work out.
And that's another one. Green Bay hasn't been themselves, at least last week against the Minnesota Vikings. They are at home against another NFC rival, and that would be the Detroit Lions. Detroit has looked pretty decent on offense, especially week one. Do we expect a shootout there, especially going up with Matthew Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers, or can Green Bay's defense kind of reel themselves back and get back on the winning side of football?
Well, yeah, like you mentioned in the first week there, Matthew Stafford lit up the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. Then they kind of came back home. They faced a good Dick LeBeau-led defense in Tennessee. Got out to an early lead. Then Marcus Mariota brought the Titans back, and Stafford, reverted back to his old self. And I think the biggest play is going to be Detroit's offensive line against Green Bay's front line. Packers are 4-0 at home in September. The last 3 years combined, Aaron Rodgers thrown 10 touchdowns, no picks in those 4 games. I think this is a great opportunity for the Packers to bounce back. As far as a shootout, I could definitely see something around like the 30 to 24 range. But I think the Green Bay Packers defense, a little bit underrated in my opinion. They were out of their element in Minnesota at a new stadium under the lights, and now they kind of go back home to that Lambeau Field sold-out crowd and have a good bounce-back week against Detroit. It was a shaky offensive line and no running game.
So let's get to it. Let's get down to Bengals at home against the Denver Broncos. Of course, the biggest news this week actually came out of Denver's camp, where the wide receivers for the Broncos have come out and said that they aren't too happy with the offensive performance so far from rookie quarterback Simeon.
Yeah, and surprising to me that they would speak out like that after 2 games. Maybe it's some tough love, and C.J. Anderson's run the ball very well in 2 games, 166 yards, a pair of touchdowns, 94 yards against Carolina in the season opener. But yeah, you run down the list of Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders as the 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers. Both of them have less than 10 catches, Matt, and no wide receivers have caught a touchdown. C.J. Anderson has the 1 receiving touchdown for this Broncos team. So yeah, they have to be feeling a little bit out of the loop when Simeon's not getting the ball to him, and a few times Simeon's thrown 3 interceptions to just 1 touchdown and completed 67.8% of his passes. But a lot of bad reads, and but I just don't get why they'd speak out 2 games into the season. This guy isn't Peyton Manning. To an extent, he's not Brock Osweiler, who was there 3 years before he took over the offense. It's going to take some growing pains. I'm surprised that they chose now to speak out about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest beef, Thomas and Sanders have combined for 226 yards on 17 total receptions during those 2 games. So they've pretty much combined for an average of 113 per game. And yes, Demaryius Thomas, yes, Emmanuel Sanders, you have both been superstars in your own right. However, can a quarterback just kind of throw to whoever he thinks is going to be open and whoever he's comfortable with? isn't that the whole goal, is to get receptions by any means possible?
And I don't know if those two are the nucleus of the complaints. But if they are, I mean, I'm looking at it now, and Sanders has been targeted 16 times, most on the team. Demaryius Thomas is second at 13. So, I mean, Simeon, he's thrown the ball 40 times, or 59 times, sorry. An average of 30 a game. And, you're getting, between those two, you've had almost half of the total targets. So I just don't get it. If this was, A.J. Green being held to this, or, somewhere else, like, I could see Des Bryant being mad, but, if it's with a guy who's only started 2 games, I just, for team chemistry, you're 2-0. Isn't that good enough? You're going to make plays. You're going to get the ball thrown to you. You got thrown to you 13 times and 16 times respectively if you're Thomas and Sanders. I mean, just be 2-0 and good enough. C.J. Anderson's running the ball well, and you're undefeated. You're defending a title. Don't speak out and destroy this kid's confidence. I mean, I'm fine with Simeon now thinking that he has to force the ball into Thomas and Sanders when that's not the case. But, if he's in for a few extra mistakes at the Paul Brown Stadium this Sunday, I wouldn't mind.
So, probably the biggest matchup to watch, at least in my opinion, and we saw A.J. Green struggle last week. I believe 2 catches for 36 yards, if I'm not mistaken, against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But A.J. Green is going to be going up most likely against Aqib Talib, probably one of the better cornerbacks in the league over the past few years. What does A.J. Green have to do to Aqib Talib to really get back on track to what we saw him Week 1 against Revis Island?
Yeah, and that's a great question, Matt, and I think it all comes down to winning at the line of scrimmage. Talib really likes to bump and run. I watched Denver a lot. My best friend's a huge Denver fan, so I've gotten pretty familiar with Denver, and that defense is as good as advertised. I mean, on a week-to-week basis, they are daunting, and you have to win at the line of scrimmage, and when you do bump and run like that, Revis didn't have a lot of safety help against A.J. Green. I don't think that'll be the case against Denver with Kayvon Webster and T.J. Ward back in the defensive secondary for Denver. But I think it's all about quick passes for Dalton, finding receivers open very quick, because if I'm really afraid about coverage sacks in this game, Matt. Denver 52 sacks last year. Von Miller working on pretty much a rookie in Cedric Ogbuehi, just making his third start of his NFL career. But I think it comes down to winning at the line of scrimmage and, getting open on those quick slants and 5-yard outs. And, Dalton can make those throws, and that I'm confident with. But, the more time Dalton has to stay in the pocket and wait for routes to develop and, have to scramble, the more likely it is we turn into Week 1 where the Jets sacked him 7 times.
So news comes out too today that Tyler Eifert is kind of back practicing and could be back soon. Do we think that he could be back as soon as the Thursday night game against Miami? Are we thinking possibly more of them waiting an extra week, trying to give him practice instead of trying him on a short week like that?
Yeah. If it were me, I would say Week 5 in Dallas, just because you get the Miami game out of the way on Thursday. You have an extra, you don't rush him back on a short week when he's only been, at this time he'll only be practicing for a week. Excuse me. But I mean, it's hard not to think that the Bengals are needing him back with a ton of urgency. 6 red zone trips so far this season. Only one of them has resulted in a touchdown. That came on the 12-yard run by Jeremy Hill against the Jets. Last week in Pittsburgh, he was very much needed down there, settling for 3 Mike Nugent red zone field goals while Pittsburgh converted both the times they got into the red zone. So, that was the difference in the game. You can talk about the knee gate all you want with Tyler Boyd and C.J. Uzomah, but when you settle for 3 red zone field goals on the road against a division rival, don't be surprised when you lose by 8 points when you left points on the board. So I think getting him back is a necessity for this team. You just don't, with his history, you don't want to rush anything. So I would say, not on a short week in Miami, I would say week 5 at Dallas, just to make sure he's 100%. That would be my best guess, man.
And I don't disagree with you. I mean, obviously you want him back sooner rather than later, but he doesn't do you any good if he gets injured the first game he's back. And so I'd love to see him take an extra week, get comfortable again, get back in the rhythm with Dalton, because there is going to be a little rust there initially with Dalton for sure. And CJ Uzomah has done an incredible job filling in that role. Granted, I thought Croft was going to be more of a factor than he really has been, but Uzomah is proving to be a really solid pickup for the Bengals, and so it's a good thing, and it's a good problem to have, because him coming back means that maybe Croft now drops to the number 3 tight end, and you really throw CJ out there with Eifert and have that 2 tight end set that was really pictured for this team, and something that they've been striving for since they drafted Tyler Eifert to come in with Gresham. And so definitely looking forward to that. And you know what? Dallas would be a great place to do it. They've got a pretty good team, although they've been on the they were on the unfortunate side a couple weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. I may have it backwards. And then I think they won week 2. So they're 1-1 as well. We'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks before these teams play. But definitely going to be interesting seeing when they can get Eifert back for sure. Going back to the game, though, that sits right in front of us. Denver's offense, we kind of talked about the wide receivers, but there's another point to this, and that is their running game. And the Bengals, of course, unfortunately, have actually given up the most rushing yards in the NFL through 2 weeks. And that's going to be a key factor for these Broncos going into this game. How do the Bengals stop a hot running game from Denver?
Well, it's all about loading the box, and you do that. A lot of teams could do that last year because they weren't scared of Peyton Manning throwing the football. They loaded the box. They stopped C.J. Anderson. It's about getting a push up front with Geno Atkins and Domata Peko, which should be a possibility. But through the first 2 games, it hasn't looked like that. It's evident that Vontaze Burfict is very much missed in the middle of the field. As good as Vinny Ray is, as good as Ray Malaluga has been, it's still a missing link. And Carlos Dansby's been okay. Leads the Bengals in tackles, I want to say. And then we had 8 against Pittsburgh, 11 against the Jets. But Burfict will be missed. But without him, I think you have to load the box, and you can't be afraid to load the box and have one-on-one coverage with Kirkpatrick on Emmanuel Sanders and Adam Jones on Demaryius Thomas. But it'll also come down to the pass rush affecting the running game as well. Just because if you can get a good pass rush, it makes teams not want to throw as much. And, C.J. Anderson, to his credit, he's bounced back from just an awful 2015. We're kind of hoping Jeremy Hill gets to that level where he bounces back and looks like his old self. But, Anderson, to his credit, he's hitting the holes harder, not as dancing as much in the backfield. And, he doesn't have the benefit of Peyton Manning, who could read a defense better than anyone has ever been able to, and audible to run plays. But, he's still running well. But on Sunday, I think it just comes down to the Bengals not missing tackles, which was a killer with D'Angelo Williams out of the backfield a few times. And just, winning at the line of scrimmage, getting a good push up front.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's interesting, and you brought up Carlos Dansby leading the team. He has 21 total tackles, 13 solo, 8 assists. The next closest is actually Vincent Ray with 15 total tackles. So obviously Carlos Dansby comes into Cincinnati. He is everywhere on the field to get all these tackles. They pushed him back in coverage a little bit, kind of set him up in the middle of the field to take away some of the longer tight end plays. Is that something that we might see kind of go away once Vontaze Burfict comes back? Or will we still see that coverage in the center of the field that we've seen, through 2 weeks?
Oh, you'll definitely see Dansby still back on the field covering tight ends. Vinny Ray Malaluga, great powerful linebackers, not very subpar covering tight ends. And, Emmanuel Lemur was our tight end cover guy for the last couple years, and then he departed to Minnesota. And I think Dansby's kind of stepped into that role. It'll be definitely interesting to see come week 5 if Dansby can keep up with the likes of Jason Witten there in Dallas. But yeah, I think even with Burfict coming back, Dansby will still see plenty of snaps on the field, and he'll be in pass coverage too against the opposition tight end.
The other thing that stands out to me on the stat sheet, the Bengals have allowed, and granted last week was much better, they only allowed, I believe, 1 sack, although they had plenty of QB hurries. They have only made 2 sacks on defense. Has it been, from what you've seen, has it been more of a factor of the Bengals are just getting adjusted to, where quarterbacks are getting it out quicker? Or is it something that we're seeing not as much push up front from the core group of guys?
I think it's teams getting adjusted better. I saw a lot in the Jets game. Geno Atkins, and the Jets have a great offensive line. And, the Steelers, in the 2 games the Bengals played, the Jets have one of the best offensive lines. And, Ben Roethlisberger, and you've known this, you've been a Bengals fan for so long, he just doesn't go down easy. Mm-hmm. I mean, how many times did the Bengals have a guy draped all over him, and he still finds a way to get the pass off, whether it's complete or incomplete? And how many holding calls were missed in that Steelers game? But I digress on that. From the tape I've seen, a lot of in the Jets game, you had Bilal Powell and Matt Forte coming out and out of the backfield, kind of chipping Carlos Dunlap a bit to throw him off and give their right tackle a break. In the Pittsburgh game, D'Angelo Williams and the Steelers running backs kind of did the same thing. I think teams are really just adjusting better, and they're doubling Geno, and I think that just attributes to Domata Peko. As much as you love him, he's not much of a factor in the pass rush game, but there has been good signs because Marcus Hunt and Will Clark have stepped up a few big plays so far this season, and I'm hoping those numbers turn around as the season goes on.
Now, one of the big things that we talked about, or at least I had talked about with one of the podcasts that I did this week, I like to thank first off the guys over at now I'm going to blank on the podcast. I apologize, Vince Wright. But one of the podcasts we did, we actually talked about last week's game, and it was very interesting because an article came up about it too, about Villanueva supposedly saying that Michael Johnson's one of the nicest guys you could ever meet, and apologized for hitting people.
Yeah.
In a football game.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Johnson, stop that, please, especially against the Steelers. But one of the big things we talked about a little bit was Marvin Lewis's control over the team, and one of the big things that came up was about the comparison between him and Bill Belichick, and why Bill Belichick's able to kind of control the emotions of the players better than Marvin Lewis. And we haven't seen so much in the first 2 weeks. Obviously, Vontaze Burfict's not there. He'll come back week 5. One of the big things that I mentioned, and give me your opinion on this too, I had mentioned that Bill Belichick seems to have a lot more physical control of the team because the Kraft family allows him to have more control of the team. And he almost kind of plays a GM role and we almost saw Marvin get that role, and then they brought in Duke Tobin. Do you agree? Do you have different points on that? On what you think kind of is going to be kind of the deciding factor on how Marvin Lewis really is coaching this team? Is it been a little bit different than what we saw last season, especially after that playoff loss?
Well, it's hard to imagine it wouldn't be changed up a bit. But going back to after that playoff loss, going back to your point about Belichick, I think really the biggest difference between these two, two of the longest tenured coaches in the NFL, if not the longest, after Coughlin left this offseason with the Giants. But, Bill Belichick's, the leash you have with him is the shortest in the NFL. I mean, how many times do we see Stephen Ridley get benched after fumbling once? Just once. Missing a blocking assignment, bench. Jonas Gray rushes for 200 yards against the Colts a few years back. Next week he misses a practice, doesn't see the field again. I mean, Belichick's leash is so short. And with the Bengals, it's kind of like Marvin Lewis. It's kind of you get away with more with him. But it also comes back to, the Bengals are that team that gives second chances. They signed Pac-Man Jones with all the troubles he's had. They signed Vontaze Burfict, undrafted from Arizona State, because they knew all the collegiate troubles he had. So I think, Belichick has a tighter grip on his team and has more control because he has the Super Bowl rings to prove it, and they completely trust his decisions, and he doesn't put up with that stuff. I would hate to see what the Patriots locker room looked like if the Patriots imploded in a postseason game like that.
Yeah, one thing's probably for sure, and that's there would be a lot of changes on that team and on that roster. All right, Bengals Broncos. You said before, Jeremy Hill, we haven't seen him bounce back. Like, he's talked about kind of almost what we saw a little bit in the playoffs, or in the preseason, with his running style, kind of almost looking like he was back to rookie form. Where did that go? I mean, it almost seems like he lost between the preseason and the regular season. He almost seems like he lost what was almost successful for him in the preseason. Are we seeing him dance more in the backfield again?
Matt, this is something like I can never put my finger on about what is he injured? No, it doesn't appear so. But it makes no sense to me because 2014 he has his big coming out party as a rookie, and that's coming when AJ Green was hurt a lot of the time. Marvin Jones wasn't there. Tyler Eifert wasn't there. Jermaine Gresham was hurt. Giovanni Bernard was hurt. And all these weapons gone, and Hill still was able to bust out a nearly beat the Bengals rookie record for rushing, missing Corey Dillon by 6 yards. And then with all those weapons back, you figured it would open up more lanes in the running game last season. And that just wasn't the case. Hill was held to 794 yards, and, that was largely overshadowed because he did rush for so many short touchdowns. And now, so far this season, it's just been more of the same. And, up front, Russell Bodine is just, struggling. It is in his fourth season. And, he's still really in the running game struggling. And, where's Ryan Hewitt? The one who sprang Hill for so many yards in 2014. Played one snap against Pittsburgh last week. And, why did we give him multiple $1 million if he's not going to be on the field as a fullback set? And I think if I had to pinpoint what could be the answer, it'd be, maybe line up Jeremy Hill behind Ryan Hewitt in the eye and give him someone to follow instead of, lining up in the shotgun and giving him carries when he's not that fast and, he does a lot of the time try to dance around defenders, and I just don't get it. And I don't see it getting fixed this week either against Denver's really good defense.
So that brings up the question then, and that is it time for the Bengals to really sit Russell Bodine and bring in either T.J. Johnson or Westerman.
Yeah. I mean, Bodine has been. This is his 4th year, so I mean he knows the offense. I mean it'd be kind of tough to throw in another center, but you know if it doesn't get better soon, you know that has to be looked at as one of the options for this team. But I think you know Bodine was there when Hill went off in 2014. I mean the missing link right now is that Ryan Hewitt's not in it.
Yeah, I mean, and that's very true. I think one of the things that we can point to, though, in seeing the changes is not a bad thing, is the team who at least most Bengals fans hate the most, and that would be the Steelers. When Marquise Pouncey came into a situation as a rookie, thrown in there, and his performance was, bar none, one of the best offensive line performances by a rookie that has been in years. So for me, I mean, if you don't start seeing it get better soon, I almost say you might have to give him some practice reps and see where Christian Westerman is. You know, because if he's looking like a better center option, if he's performed better, plus if Russell Bodine gets kind of that, dare I say it, competitive aspect to the snaps. Maybe it's a psychology thing that all of a sudden he starts to perform better. So it's going to be incredibly interesting to see how they handle that, because granted, during the off season you had Paul Alexander come out and say that, you know, Bodine is an excellent center. You have Marvin Lewis back him up. You had Ken Zampes back him up as well. And so, to me, it almost seems like the Mike Brown too much faith and too much dedicating too much, and maybe the loyalty to a fault aspect. I don't know. It's something definitely to keep an eye on. Like I said, I'd like to see Christian Westerman at least take a couple snaps in practice, see where he's at, and at least give Russell Bodine a look at the fact that he is replaceable. See what that does for him.
Well, when do we get to the point where Giovanni Bernard gets 15 carries a game and Jeremy Hill gets 10? You know, I mean. Yeah.
But I mean, the one thing we can say with that, though, is we're seeing Giovanni Bernard take plenty of snaps. I mean, 100 yards last week in the receiving game.
Well, that's a different scenario with the Bengals were playing from behind by so much. I think that, you know, the middle of the field was open, and, you know, how many times did Bernard actually run the ball? Had a 10-yard run on the last drive of the game. But, you know, I understand how he out-snapped Hill, and he's a liable threat in the receiving game. And I wish the Bengals would use Bernard in the slot more, because, you know, he'd outrun these linebackers over the middle on these passes. I mean, that's what Rex Burkhead did in the playoff game against the Colts a few years back.
Yeah.
But you know, I would love if, you know, the Bengals ran the ball 30 times and Hill and Bernard each got 15. Or if they ran it 25 times and Bernard got 13, Hill got 12. I think, you know, at what point does Hill's lack of production lead to Bernard getting more carries?
Yeah, and I somewhat agree with you. Plus, you brought up a great point. Rex Burkhead's there. I mean, Burkhead is a great example of somebody who could step in and maybe you have to give Jeremy Hill a week off. I don't know, or make him third on the depth chart one week and just basically make him figure out an adjustment. I mean, that's something's there, or at least something's got to be there. But Rex Burkhead is there, and he's another guy who can come out of the backfield, you know, make some plays with his feet, but catch a ball. So you have a dual threat with two of your three backs there. So I definitely agree, and as you said, it's interesting to see what Hewitt is really going on with him, because they haven't really been using him at all, and it's becoming curious to why not when they've been so successful with him. So, the secondary of the Bengals are going to go up against, we've talked about the guys before with the complaining. They're going to go up against Demaryius Thomas. They're going to go up against Emmanuel Sanders. What does the secondary have to do to really get control of these guys so that those passes that are coming their way keep being either dropped or overthrown, disrupting this passing game on the secondary level? We know what the line's got to do. What do they got to do in the secondary?
Well, it's the same thing they did in Pittsburgh last week. The only weak link of that secondary in Pittsburgh was Darqueze Dennard. He got burned by Sammy Coates twice, and both times it led to Steelers touchdowns. Adam Jones played a great game. Dre Kirkpatrick played a great game. That's the clear answer. Those two have to play shutdown ball again. They don't have to completely shut down their receivers, because you're not going to shut down one former 1,000-yard receivers, both Pro Bowlers. They're going to get theirs in. Definitely the best. Remember week 1, Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker combined for 5 catches.
Yep.
Decker had 2, I believe. Marshall had 3, maybe vice versa. Decker had the touchdown. But I think that's the same game plan. Strong coverage on the outside. I think in the slot, Chris Lewis-Harris and Darqueze Dennard going up against Cody Latimer and Jordan Norwood. Maybe some interesting matchups to keep your eye on. And finally, like I mentioned, with those rookie quarterbacks always favoring tight ends, Virgil Green versus Carlos Dansby. I think good man-to-man coverage across the board, and for Paul Gunther in the secondary, a multitude of looks. This is Simeon, a young guy making his first road start. You mentioned in the last podcast he can control the volume in his home stadium his first 2 starts. He's not going to be able to do that on Sunday at Paul Brown Stadium. So it's up to Gunther. Gunther's been great at bending but not breaking, man. Last year the Bengals were 20th against the pass. They were 7th against the run.
Yep.
We're number 1 in the AFC in scoring. So, he's got a good formula, and you just got to, first of all, get some pressure on Simeon, but we already discussed that. And in the secondary, give him a different set of looks that he hasn't seen. And I think part of that, too, is don't be afraid to blitz a corner from the slot. A lot of the times we saw Leon Hall do that with Mike Zimmer. Zimmer loved to blitz Leon Hall unexpectedly, and I think they can do the same thing with either Darqueze Dennard or Chris Lewis-Harris, or even Josh Shaw.
So, prediction time.
Okay.
We talked about every aspect of both teams. What's the end result? Where do the Bengals and Broncos finish when the clock hits 0 in the fourth quarter?
I predicted for my school newspaper that I write for, I said Bengals 17, Broncos 13. And, but it's hard to pick. And the one factor behind that is Denver's defense. Denver's offense, predictable. They scored 21 points against Carolina, 19 points against Indianapolis, but the 2 defensive touchdowns got them to 34 points in that win over the Colts.
Yep.
And, at any time, Von Miller can run around that outside when Andy Dalton's looking to his left, knock that ball out, turn it into a defensive touchdown. I gave the Bengals a 17-13 win because I think overall these are 2 defenses. Cincinnati ranked first in the AFC in scoring last year, Denver ranked third, that, know how to play defense and know how to keep points off the board. But I gave the Bengals that 4-point edge, hoping in my best interest that they can avoid that big crucial turnover. And we saw it last year. The crucial turnover was McCarron fumbling in overtime. And then we saw it the year before in 2014 in Cincinnati. Dalton threw a pick 6 that hit off A.J. Green's hand. Aqib Talib made the diving catch. Broncos opened up the scoring that way. But it just seems, Matt, Denver can be on the ropes for an entire game, and that defense makes a big key play, and that's what I'm hoping the Bengals avoid on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. I think these are two great defenses going up against each other, and arguably, if they can get the run game back under control, the Bengals are arguably one of the top 5 defenses in the league. Big thing is they're going up against the top defense in the league. Von Miller, as you said, is very good at coming around the corner, coming on the blind side, and finding a way to disrupt the offense. And so it's hard for me to sit there and really say that Denver is, a team that is beatable. But against a rookie quarterback where you're looking to do the same thing to him that their team's doing to you, it's very plausible. I'm right there with you. I'm actually going to go with something that, needless to say, Elliot Harrison said, and that is, I think it's going to be a 22-17 game. Bengals win. And I'm actually going to say that it's the Bengals defense that scores their first touchdown of the season and makes the difference.
I would love it.
So we'll reset here real quick before we get into our wonderful lightning round. This is Men in Stripes, brought to you by StripeHype.com. Also brought to you now by Audible.com, where you can find over 180,000 titles for Audible books to download. Just visit audibletrials.com/Men in Stripes for your 30-day trial, and we look forward to working with them every week. So, lightning round, it's here. I have to be honest, I just looked at the schedule right before we started the podcast. So I'm going as fresh on this as possible just because I want to go off of instant reactions. We'll start with tonight's matchup. It is still 0-0 in the first quarter, and that would be the Texans at the Patriots. Who do you got?
I got the Texans, and as much as I hate to do that, if Jimmy Garoppolo was playing, I would say the Patriots by a touchdown. I flipped it around and said Houston by a touchdown, even though they are in Foxborough, and Bill Belichick's the best coach in the NFL. I just have a tough time seeing what Houston did to Kansas City's offense last week. I have a tough time thinking that LeGarrette Blount could lead the Patriots offense because I don't expect much from Jacoby Brissett against a defense led by J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney.
I'm right there with you. I think Texans wins. We've already seen so far in the game, LeGarrette Blount has been pretty much a zero factor. I think it continues. J.J. Watt is a beast. I think he's going to get into the backfield, disrupt the passing game. Definitely a great opportunity for the Texans this week to take advantage of a win. All right, so let's go quick on these. Cardinals at the Bills.
Give me the Cardinals on the road. Palmer against a Bills defense that got scorched by the Jets last week. He's got just as many weapons as the Jets do. Nice grammar, Shelby. Yeah, give me the Cardinals.
I'm right there with you. I think Cardinals. Bills go 0-3 again. They'll be the team that, at least in the AFC East, gets to try to play spoiler for the second season in a row, instead of playing the let's make the playoffs. Raiders at Titans. Both these teams are 1-1.
Yeah, give me the Raiders. Hesitant after I saw their defense last week, but that was against Matt Ryan. Tennessee's defense looked great against Detroit. I'm not fully on the Marcus Mariota bandwagon yet, so I say Oakland in a close one.
I like Derek Carr. However, I like Derek Carr on the West Coast. He is now a little bit further on the East Coast than what he likes. I'm going to go Titans on this one, and I'm going to go Titans very close. I'm gonna go the 17-14 game there. Redskins, an 0-2 team against the New York Giants, 2-0 after a ridiculous defensive play for New York. Who do you got?
Yeah, I like the Giants in this one as well. I think Eli Manning, even though he couldn't get the Giants in the end zone last week, still threw for over he threw for 368 yards in that win. I think he's playing great football. I think Victor Cruz coming back. Sterling Shepard has been amazing as a rookie receiver. And then, of course, you have Odell Beckham and then Shane Vereen coming out of the backfield. The Redskins are a mess right now. 2 losses at home to start their season against the Steelers and Cowboys, respectively. And, going on the road now to the Meadowlands. I think the Giants moved to 3-0. The Redskins 0-3 and a tough start for a defending NFC East champ.
There's one thing that Jay Gruden doesn't have that we've seen our lovely Mike Zimmer up in Minnesota have, and that is Mike Zimmer knows how two-way football works. Jay Gruden doesn't know how to coach a defense to save his life.
Mm-hmm.
I think Giants win. I think they win it quite handedly. I'm going 28-17 on this one.
Okay.
Browns, after a terrible loss and an 0-2 start, going to Miami to play in a hopefully sunny atmosphere. Who do you got?
Yeah, give me Miami. Just too many question marks for the Browns. Isaiah Crowell had a nice game, but that running back tandem back there is still a mess. Rookie quarterback Cody Kessler going up against Miami on the road in his first start with literally no weapons almost. Terrell Pryor's okay, I guess. But, yeah, give me the Dolphins like 21-9, and I'm reluctant to give Cleveland 3 field goals.
I'd be reluctant to give them 2 field goals, but I am. I'm going Dolphins. I'm going the same route. I'm going 20-6 on that one. Just too many questions. Corey Coleman's not there. If he was there, I think they have a fighting chance to at least get a touchdown in the game. But they're depleted. That's for sure.
There's nothing more I want than the Browns to go 0-16. I know a lot of Bengals fans that I know hate Pittsburgh a lot more, but I'm just not there yet.
I can't, and that's just because of family ties. Well, we can talk about that off camera. Ravens 2-0, going to Jacksonville to play a Jaguars team that has struggled but hasn't struggled.
Yeah, I still don't know how much of an impact Chris Ivory's going to have making his team debut with the Jaguars. It intrigues me a bit. TJ Yeldon's been awful. But Jaguars, this was supposed to be the year, kind of. Not like a Super Bowl year, but like an AFC South title year. Blake Bortles was a top 5 statistical quarterback last season. Now he's got all these weapons. Yeldon, Ivory, Allen Robinson, Allen Hurns, Julius Thomas, and this defense loaded with first-round talent. And then Aaron Rodgers kind of picked them apart the first game. Phillip Rivers, even without Danny Woodhead and Keenan Allen, lit them apart. So I'm going to go with the hot hand and take the Ravens in this one, like around 27-23.
I'm scared to take the Ravens on this one, and the reason is because the Ravens struggled mightily in the first half against the Cleveland Browns. And granted, their defense isn't absolutely horrid in Cleveland, but if you struggle against a defense like that, the Jaguars played a respectable game week 1 against the Packers. If they have any remnants of doing that again, the Ravens are in trouble. At least if they play like they did in Cleveland for the first half. And this Jaguars team is a lot better than that Browns team. I'm going to go Jaguars. I'm not going to go by much, though. I'm saying it's going to be down to like a 21-20 game there. We talked about it a little earlier. Lions at Packers. Packers coming off of a very tough loss to the Vikings. Lions, same thing. Who do you got?
Same stat as I said earlier. Rodgers 4-0 in September at home the last 3 years. 10 touchdowns, no picks. He lights up the Lions, and that Green Bay defense holds Stafford and company like 27-17.
I'm right there with you. I think I just don't see Stafford and company continuing to get away with the number one wide receiver by committee. I think somebody has to eventually emerge there for them to be successful. I think Green Bay takes this one. I think it's a 27-17 type game there. Vikings at Panthers. A lot surrounding this, of course, with them looking to possibly move the game. Who do you got?
Yeah, give me the Panthers, and I think Minnesota's defense will stiffen up against Cam Newton and company, but I can't put trust in Sam Bradford to go beat Carolina, even though his debut with Minnesota was a good one against Green Bay. Just give me Carolina in maybe like a 20-13 range.
Okay. I think if this was reversed, I think if this was in Minnesota, I'm looking at Minnesota possibly eking something out, and that's just because we've seen Cam Newton struggle on the road in loud places. However, with this being in Carolina, I'm going Carolina. I agree with you. I think it's going to be more of a defensive type struggle. I'll say 17-13. Panthers win. The Rams, instead of coming from central part of the United States, now are coming from the West Coast to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'll take the Buccaneers. Rams offense, even with Todd Gurley, hasn't scored a touchdown yet. Still struggling to put up points. Their defense played well against Seattle, but Seattle's offense also struggled against Miami, so I think that's a little bit more on their side. I think Jameis Winston bounces back, finds Mike Evans a few times. Charles Sims, Jaquez Rodgers both catch passes out of the backfield very well. So give me Tampa Bay like 24-7.
So they score their first touchdown this week.
Defensive touchdown.
All right.
Tavon Austin punt return.
All right. There's one thing kind of holding me back from saying it's going to be that big of a win for the Buccaneers, and that is a guy by the name of Aaron Donald. Incredible defensive tackle. Came out of college with the title of the closest thing to Geno Atkins since Geno Atkins. I'm going Buccaneers. However, I am saying that it is still going to be like a 13-6 type game. 2 field goals for the Rams, still no touchdowns. 49ers travel to the 12-man in Seattle. We saw how Seattle was last week against the LA Rams. Who do you got?
As much as I want to pick the 49ers in an upset, I just can't. I just keep thinking it's going to be the week that Russell Wilson goes back to playing like he did in 2014 or 2015 at the end of the year. So give me the Seahawks winning that game like 17-10.
I think the 12-man really does play a factor, and yeah, I'm not still on the 49ers bandwagon. We saw them come back to earth a little bit last week against the Panthers. I'm going Seahawks. I'm going 17-10. 12-man, congratulations on a touchdown that you didn't actually score. Jets head to Kansas City. Kansas City has struggled the past 2 weeks. The Jets have actually looked fairly good offensively. Who do you got?
Yeah, it's a tough one to pick because, I hate picking against the Chiefs at Arrowhead, but I'm going to go with the hot hand, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Granted that he avoids the big turnovers because, he's just due for like a few of them a game. It seems like he's due to just hand you one. And I think if he can avoid that, Matt Forte has looked fantastic in 2 games. And so give me the Jets I'm not sure about the Chiefs offense, like 23-13.
For me, it's not so much the Chiefs offense as it has been their defense. When you allow San Diego to score so many freaking points and take it to overtime because they were up by so much that you had to come back, that's my issue. If Ryan Fitzpatrick continues to be hot, he's got the weapons to do it. And you named him a little earlier for sure with Brandon Marshall being the key guy there. I'm going Jets. I know the guys over at Arrowhead Addict are going to kill us for it, but I just can't trust that Chiefs defense no matter where they're at this point. And I think they go 1-2, coming out that they were supposed to be the favorites in the AFC West. Chargers head to Indianapolis. The Chargers have been impressive. The Colts not so much. Who do you got?
Yeah, I think this is a high-scoring game with Phillip Rivers and Andrew Luck. I'm just going to go with Phillip Rivers and the Chargers. You know, it's tough to pick them too without Woodhead and Keenan Allen, but last week, you know, he got it done with Tyrell Williams and the old Brown, Kelvin Benjamin. And, you know, Melvin Gordon's been running good as well. So give me the Chargers, and I'm saying by like a point, by one possession, 34-31.
Have we really seen Joey Bosa play yet? I was going to say, I haven't really seen him much. But they really haven't needed him much either. Their offense has been, dare I say it, for them having a lightning bolt, electric. Colts defense has really been subject to criticism on many levels over the past 2 weeks. And so, for me, even though they're traveling a decent distance, I think the Chargers are really working their butt off to really prove something this year. And I think they take it, and what would they be, 2-1?
The Chargers, yep.
Wow. That's something I didn't think I'd say for a while on the Chargers. The Battle of Pennsylvania, actually, it's called the Battle of the Turnpike. Steelers at Eagles, both are 2-0, and this is the first time in a long time they've both been 2-0 to start the season. Who do you got?
Yeah, Pittsburgh going to roll away with this one. You know, the Eagles struggled with Terrell Pryor in Week 1. They struggled with Eddie Royal last week, and now they're going to struggle with Antonio Brown. I believe Marcus Wheaton may be coming back from injury as well. Pittsburgh has too many weapons. I think they beat up on the Eagles 30-17.
I agree with you. I would like not to agree with you because the Steelers are terrible against teams they're supposed to beat. However, the Eagles starting 2-0 give them a little bit more motivation to roll them. I think Steelers win. I think it's a 35-21 game. Carson Wentz struggles for the first game. We'll have to see how he bounces back in Week 4. The Sunday night game, one that should be played up because both these teams' history is incredible, but they both have, well, one's been decent one week, one's been terrible both weeks. Bears at Cowboys. Who do you got?
I think Dak Prescott outplays Brian Hoyer. The Cowboys defense beats up on the Bears in a very low-scoring game. Give me Dallas 16-7.
Yeah, I'm not a big Dak Prescott fan, and Tony Romo, we've seen, hasn't been able to stay healthy to save his life. Bears, though, going down 0-3, that one's kind of tough. It's tough to see because you would hope that the Bears would make the adjustments to try to avoid going down 2-3 or down to 0-3, especially with a few teams in their division who are attempting to go 3-0, aka the Minnesota Vikings. So I'm going to go Bears. I think it's a little. I agree. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I'm going to go 13-7 on this one, and I think Dak Prescott is the one that gives up the defensive gaff to basically put the game away. Falcons going to the wonderful New Orleans Saints. Who do you got?
You know, I'm in a 2-quarterback league, and both Matt Ryan and Drew Brees are my quarterbacks, so I'm hoping for a big shootout. And, you know, Matthew, this is a tough game to pick. I'm going to pick the Saints just because they're at home. They seem to play better there. And but I'm going to say like 38-35. But it honestly, my guess is as good as any. It could just come down to who has the ball last.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And as much as Mohamed Sanu has actually weirdly been a factor, I think Saints are a better team at home. However, Drew Brees hasn't been able to really get the job done. At least he didn't in Week 1, which was surprising. I'm still gonna go Saints. I'm gonna go with a 35 to 31 game. I think high scoring. Neither of these teams really have a defense to impress anybody. So it is 3-0 in the Patriots game. Patriots are up over Houston after Houston gave up a few big plays. Let's hope something goes right there because we both want the Texans. We kind of want to see Bill Belichick suffer and not say a word in a press conference because for some odd reason he seems to just be quiet when they lose. So, with that being said, any final words for the people this week, Shelby?
Bengals have won 4 straight home openers, 5 of their last 6. Their first win ever in franchise history. They beat the Broncos 24-10 at Different Stadium on September 15th, 1968. And they win their 5th straight opener this Sunday against the Broncos to move to 2-1.
I'm right there with you. I'm hoping for a big game, and I'm hoping Andy Dalton comes back and proves that Pittsburgh ain't got nothing on them. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us again. If you haven't had a chance, check out stripehype.com. Shelby's got a couple of very solid articles over there, especially one breaking down the numbers on the Bengals in for a dogfight against the Broncos. Emil has his week 3 preparing for the Broncos. And, well, yeah, we got a couple great articles. Not to mention our week 3 power rankings is out as well on the site. Check that all out. Shelby, thanks again for continuing now in your 3rd podcast to rock it out. We'll get Tim back hopefully next week with Shelby and with myself. And we'll go back to being the 3 of us so that way you don't have to hear my voice talk because Tim sounds a whole lot better than me. So, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us. Remember, audibletrials.com/Men in Stripes for your 30-day free trial. Remember to visit stripehype.com. Remember, follow us on Twitter at Men in Stripes SH. Also, find us on Facebook at Stripe Hype. Thanks so much, Shelby, and a big hooday.
Hooday.
No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.